Hey, Jamie.
Hey Shadab, how you doing?
Good, very
Good to see
good.
you again.
Jamie, good to see you. And we have tons of things to cover, including, our announcement that came out from Apple's Worldwide Developer Convention.
Yeah, we've got a couple of rapid fire news topics as well. Everything from Meta and who they're suing to new models from Google in the weather world, and it never stops. We've got some new launches from Mistral, and we'll have some interesting news from Apple's Worldwide Developer Conference. All that and more. Stay tuned. We'll get to it in this episode of the AI Files.
Greetings. Welcome to the AI Files podcast. If you're looking to stay up to date on the AI, this is the podcast for you. I'm Shadab Hussain. I'm the director of AI at Microsoft, and I'm your co host.
Hello, everybody. Jamie Basilico, as you know already. I'm the other co-host here for the AI Files. My day job is a data and AI technical specialist and architect. And as a reminder, please note this is not an official Microsoft channel, so the views and opinions expressed by myself and Shadab are our own and do not represent the views of Microsoft.
Okay, so this week, Sam Altman has been writing, and Sam Altman has actually written some words. Let's start with that as the quote of the week. So here it goes. Starting quote. Already, we live with incredible digital intelligence, and after some initial shock, most of us are pretty used to it. Very quickly, we go from being amazed that AI can generate a beautifully written paragraph to wondering when it can generate a beautifully written novel, or from being amazed that it can make life saving medical diagnoses to wondering when it can develop the cures, or from being amazed it can create a small computer program to wondering when it can create an entire new company. This is how the singularity goes. Wonders become routine and then table stakes. Unquote, says Sam Altman in his new essay, The Gentle Singularity. He talks about how the 2025 has seen the arrival of agents that can do real cognitive work, writing computer code, and that will never be same. And then he says 2026 will likely see the arrival of systems that can figure out novel insights. 2027 may see the arrival of robots that can do tasks in the real world. And then he says like the rate of technological progress will keep accelerating and it will continue to be the case that people are capable of adapting to almost anything. I think what he's trying to portray in this paper, which is relatively short, is still long, but compared to the previous work that he has done, he's talking about how this whole, like the convergence is happening where you are going from one to another leap and you don't realize it. It may seem like the next one is going to be an uphill battle. It's going to be like something totally transformative. People are not able to visualize it, not able to understand how it will transform. But if you look in the rear view, let's say 10 years from now, when you will look back, it will look like, oh, it was just a gentle, incremental progress, nothing transformative, although it may appear now. So he talks about, for example, we are climbing the long arc of exponential technological progress. It always looks vertical, looking forward, and flat, going backwards. But it's one smooth curve. And then he talks about, like how we need to do things like we need to solve the alignment problem, for example. He gives a good example of, like social media feeds where it's an example of a misalignment because the social media feeds are based on incredible algorithms and they will feed you constantly what you like, but they do so by exploiting something in your brain that overrides your long-term preference. So even though it's a great example of AI, how it is like keeping you hooked, it's not really alignment, right? So he talks about that part, and the second part he talks about it is focus on making super intelligence cheap, widely available, and not too concentrated with any person, company, or country. Now he talks about a lot of things, and I will recommend that everybody reads it. It's relatively short, as I said, maybe a few pages. I think one thing that stands out, Jamie, is like he talks about how some jobs will disappear, some class of job, in fact, entirely will disappear, but there will be an unprecedented prosperity and wealth and the peace and happiness and all those esoteric terms. But one thing that I've started struggling to understand, that everybody is an optimist about it, but nobody's able to point how that will happen, in what form will it happen, right? It just seems like an optimism, because what is happening is, if you see, while we see that the gains in terms of the personal productivity, and then like the wonderful thing that we can do, but we have also already started seeing the negative effect. In fact, every week we talk about a lot of positive things, but we also talk about some of the negative things. What we are not seeing is that this unprecedented level of prosperity and wealth is promised. I don't think anybody really knows, right? We talk about a $1 billion unicorn will be run by one person. We talk about those kind of like nobody will be poor and things like that. But I think we are still not able to shape it, and I believe it's part of that narrative that we don't know how this will look like, because it looks exponential, it looks like unachievable. But 10 years from now, Sam Altman is like saying that it will all look, yeah, it was just part of the progress,
Yep.
essentially.
Yeah, I go back to the beginning part of what Sam said, or at least on his quote, in terms of we're used to the AI technology. If you gave somebody where we are today, something like the O3 model, and put that in front of them 5 years ago, they would be blown away. But today we're like, oh yeah, we could use this research model, or we could use this reasoning model, or think about what is capable with the video generation tools that we have today. 2 years ago people would have thought that was unreachable. So it is this sort of like, oh my god. And then, all right, what's next? I kind of call that the what's next syndrome, that humans typically have. But again, I go back to all the advancements that we've made collectively, over the last 2-3 years have just been amazing. And I have a feeling we'll see that same rate of increase or capability over the next 3 years. So I'm excited to see where we're going to go.
That is true. I mean, to be honest, yeah, I mean, it's hard to imagine that you can like as Steve Jobs used to say, right? Famously, he said in this famous speech that you can only connect dots looking backwards, not going forward. So it's really hard to imagine. But I want to actually bring another quick insight, right? Recently, there was a survey actually done by the Pew Research Center, and they do this. They are famous for doing a lot of studies and surveys, and they found, and this is a little bit relevant, right? Because ultimately, all that Sam Altman and others are talking about, ultimately, it needs to translate into the benefit for the society. And we're talking about the prosperity and 1 man $1 billion unicorn and things like that. But on the ground, let's see what's happening, right? How people are reacting to it. And if you see this research, this survey that came out, it found that nearly 2 in 3 US adults believe that AI will lead to fewer jobs over the next 2 decades. So if you see, the pessimism is kind of dominating the optimism right now among the masses, right? Now, of course, not surprisingly, the leaders of the AI, they are more optimist. And you can see here in the survey as well that AI experts, only 15% are negative about the outlook, and overwhelmingly positive about it. But general masses is a bit different on the trajectory. So there is some sort of a divide, you can say, like I would say AI optimism divide that we can see here. The other thing is, also see there's some other divides as well. For example, men are actually more optimistic about AI than the women, and I think we have discovered that in the past as well for various purposes. There could be some inherent biases, and there could be some technological challenges, and that may create further divide. Also, a lot of entry jobs, low level jobs could also be adversely impacted. um, More than half of all Americans say they basically are extremely or very concerned about job losses due to AI. I would say that I think it's time that people are asking for that proof. And sometimes the people, while they see potential, they're also seeing negative effect. So it's a bit a confusing state, in my view, at this point of time.
How do you actually see, what is the effect of AI? And people, I think it depends on how you are you using it? Are you aware? And do you see it as a threat? I'm not talking about like cyber war threat or anything like that, or Skynet threat, but a threat on your job. And I think that has a lot to do with it as well, and people's perceptions.
True. I mean, when companies keep like firing and laying off people and they say, oh, we are gaining from the AI, they fail to understand they're creating a fear factor in the society. So I think there has to be some caution which is warranted, actually. Anyway, moving on, let's talk about some of the news. And I would say that there is actually um, the new legislation which is being considered, where one of the Senate Republicans, Cynthia Lemis, has introduced a bill to shield AI companies from lawsuits if they are transparent about their system. And this legislation clarifies that professionals who are actually using AI, they remain responsible for their decision, provided the AI developers who build those models disclose their methods. So that way, a kind of little bit a protection for the AI developers, because this has been a divide, right? In fact, we have seen Governor Newsom had to actually veto a bill earlier, I think last year, where that bill was kind of going to hold the AI developer responsible for anything that the users or the builders using those models will create. And I think that goes a little bit far because it's really hard, right? I mean, you're creating a knife that somebody can vegetable, somebody can cut a person, right? How do you control that, right? It's really hard. And I think that's why this kind of bill kind of try to find that balance and transfer the onus of responsibility, or leave the most of the responsibility with the users and the builders of those AI, but also keep an onus on the AI developer that they must make sure that there is a clear instruction, there is a clear transparency about how to use them. Okay. Now, one important thing, Jamie, there is a lot of talk about this big beautiful bill, right? Tax bill, etc., that is going on. It is still not passed, and one of the provision in that bill is actually that proposes blocking the states from passing AI regulations for 10 years. And I think this is being done to make sure that the all states are at the parity and the states individually are not passing their own AI regulation. Of course, that has been opposed, and the states have come back saying that no, that AI states need to retain some sort of autonomy on those kind of things. They generally, like for example, California generally has been ahead than a lot of other states in terms of considering the new laws and their own specific regulations, etc. So I think I don't know what will happen to that one, but I think that is also something that people should know, that this is a little bit of a divide. Of course, the companies, the AI developers, have been actually pushing that, okay, though the AI regulation should be at the federal level, not at the state level.
Yeah, I mean, this could very quickly turn into a show that gets into, politics and what the states and what the government should or shouldn't be doing. I guess at a general level, for me at least, I want to see certainly competition, but I also want to see fairness at the same time for what each company can do. And there's got to be some general level of regulation, but I don't think it's good for or healthy for the markets to actually be regulated to some extent where you can't actually innovate, or you're going to be fearful of innovating because of X, Y, or Z. So I do like some of these things in terms of what the Senate Republican has put forth in this bill. But there shouldn't be things that come down to the state level that's going to give one state versus the next, I'll call it a leg up, as far as what they're able to do within their current jurisdiction for these different companies.
Yep.
Speaking of companies, a great segue into the next one. So Scale AI, there's been talks things in the news about significant investment from Meta, and this comes from their CEO, Alexander Wang. And two things on this. One is, Scale AI. For those that don't know, they're a data labeling company, and a lot of these foundational firms actually use Scale AI for the things that they do in terms of like labels that are aligned with data for training these large language models. So that's really an underpinning and a significant portion of what Gen AI development is because it's part of the foundational model. So this investment, which I believe it was close to 30 billion, 29 billion, somewhere around there, from Meta, is for this firm. And I believe it was a 49% stake, and there's some pieces of that as we were just talking about government, the whole reason for 49% is that they don't have then a controlling interest, which would then go to monopoly and potentially stopping any of this acquisition by Meta or the at least investment of it. So there's several things, as I mentioned. If Meta is purchasing this, are they using this to go into a different line of business in terms of like labeling, or are they doing it to stop some of the other competitors, the foundational model companies, to not allow them to use this data labeling? And again, Scale AI is probably one of the predominant ones, or if not the predominant, they're certainly up there. So is that an angle? The other thing that was also announced is not only is Meta given 49% over to Scale AI, but its own CEO is stepping down from the role and joining Meta to help the company in terms of the work. So this is a pretty big deal on both levels, not only for this big investment, but then also for this acquisition of talent. And I don't think this is just the one and done either with Meta. I think there's been some pretty big reports that they're shelling out, 7-figure, 8-figure for bringing people over, that are really going to be mind trust for really pushing ahead what Meta's doing.
I think Mark is really trying to actually notch things up, because I think there is a general perception that Meta has started to fall behind a little bit. Like, like their models are not as cutting edge. For
Well,
example, they have
look,
been, there
yeah,
is,
look, I
uh,
was going to say, look at what DeepSeek did, right? They kind
exactly.
of leapfrogged them in terms of like open source models. So
Exactly. Even
that's
that
what
open source
Meta's, yeah,
leadership is at the risk right now. And I think the other news are essentially that Mark is actually personally leading some of the recruitment efforts, and they are trying to hire some AI leaders and researchers, and the salaries are, through the roof. Jamie, hearing that, 9 figures over a few years, that kind of compensation package they're talking about. Man, what
yep.
are we doing here?
Yeah, no, I heard. Yeah, he's wine and dining them at his house, right? Where's
Exactly.
our invite?
Exactly. So I think, and to the point that you said, which angle it is, to be honest, I would say, as far as Mark is concerned, all angle probably. Maybe he's
Yeah,
also trying to take a fight with China, because Alexander Wong is known China hawk. Okay. He has taken some full page ads and all those kind of thing. He has been cautioning about China gaining an edge on the AI and things like that. So who knows? But this is a good example of another acqui-hire. Okay, let's talk about some of the rapid fire news. Jamie, Barbie is going AI. Mattel, the company behind Barbie and Hot Wheels, is teaming up with the OpenAI to build AI powered toys. I think that would be exciting. We'll
yeah,
see.
definitely.
Um,
Got to take out my Barbie dream house. So in other news, Google, and this one's definitely right up my alley. They unveiled a powerful new model for forecasting tropical cyclones. So what's interesting with this is that the National Hurricane Center is working in tandem with them to test this for this hurricane season, and it's based off of some models that were initially created with the European Weather Authority.
yeah, and the Meta is suing AI Nudify app maker Crush AI for advertising on its platform. And Meta is saying that, like, we've blocked them multiple times. They just keep doing this, and I was like surprised. Okay, so have they lost control of their own platform? Is it hacked? What's happening? But the problem is that this is a disturbing trend that apps like Nudify, which basically kind of promise that undress anyone without, of course, the consent, and then that's becoming pretty prevalent. This is a really bad example of AI misalignment.
So, on a totally different note, Disney and Universal are suing Midjourney, as we're just talking about imaging, but in this case for alleging AI copyrighted material or copyright infringements. So again, it kind of goes back to we're seeing, lawsuits galore in this AI space, and this is no different. In this case, it's Midjourney.
This is going to be a landmark one. I think this will have a lot of impact, right? It will impact a lot of companies like OpenAI, even Anthropic. I don't know if Google will also come under purview because they do own their own a lot of media, but this will become, I would say, landmark case based on the outcome. On the other news, lawyers could now face severe penalties for fake AI generated citations. UK court warns, this we have seen many times where there are news that, the fake citations, fake cases, AI is suggesting, hallucinating really. And then lawyers are just taking it on the face value and going to the court and submitting those as a precedence. That's tiring, but that could be now punishable. The court has warned.
And our last piece of rapid fire news: OpenAI is reported to be working with Google Cloud to scale their compute. And again, if you think back to the work between OpenAI and Microsoft, this aligns with another, I don't want to call it departure, but another working relationship that is outside of Microsoft. So this is all about, hey, we need more chips. Google has some available capacity, and OpenAI will run its enterprise models on the GCP environment.
This is a head scratcher, to be honest. Right? There is no permanent enemy in the corporate world. That was a saying, and that's so true. They're competing head on. In fact, the OpenAI's entire existence is because of they wanted to challenge Google's position. But
Yep.
anyway, we'll discover more.
Yeah, I guess the bottom line is the bottom line if someone's going to pay for a compute, But yeah, it's a
Correct.
little bit of a head scratcher when I saw that as well. So, totally getting into another set of topics here, and this is around launches. So everyone's probably familiar with Mistral. So Mistral has come up with their first reasoning model. Believe it or not, I didn't realize that Mistral didn't have a reasoning model until now, until this came out. But they released two models. Hopefully, I'm going to pronounce this correct. I don't have my French accent on, but this is Magistral. So as I mentioned already, this is a reasoning model. They have a Magistral Small, which is 24 billion parameter open source model. And then the Magistral Medium is not an open source model. And this is a more powerful version of the Small. So it's multilingual, allows obviously for reasoning. It can do English, French, Spanish, German, Italian, and a couple of other languages. It is fine-tuned with a multi-step traceable reasoning path. And what that really means is you could actually see what the model is thinking, which we're kind of familiar and used to already based on what we've seen already from the other players like OpenAI and DeepSeek and Google's Gemini 2.5 Pro. It offers a greater speed. So again, if you've used any of the Mistral existing models, it's certainly faster than what was there before, and it's up to a 10x faster response time using what they call flash answers inside of LeChat. So enterprise use, obviously, this is great for several different use cases, whether it's legal, healthcare, or any of, I'll call it governmental sectors that need some audit ability and tracing, as well as in the compliance sector. So you can see some of these benchmarks, and I pulled this directly off of the Mistral or the Mistral Magistral site. So what's interesting is they're comparing this to DeepSeek, and then they also do some comparisons to their previous model. Now, what I found interesting is that this Mistral Most the dark orange is the Mistral Medium, which is for the enterprise one, the non-open source one. It's definitely leaps and bounds better than what they have against um, their other model, but it is not as performant as something like the DeepSeek R1 model. So they're trying to show the comparisons here, and obviously it's not a Chinese quote unquote company. So drawing that comparison, and they're trying to show that the numbers are fairly close. But what they do point out also is it's got a higher favorable score from users that are actually doing comparisons. And that's that, at least in this example with the AIME 24, they've got a 90% um, uh, human approval versus just the raw score on those. So it's an interesting to me, at least, on how they're looking at comparing, because they're not comparing this, I would say, to the leader as it stands now in a reasoning model. Well, I was about to say 2.5, but we'll get into some things a little bit later on in this episode. But whether or not it's the reasoning model from OpenAI or Gemini from Google, it's not up to that part, and they don't even bring that into some of their comparisons that they've run, or at least that they published.
Mistral is doing actually some pretty good things of late. Lots of news coming out of Mistral. I think one of the smart thing that they're doing is they're trying to figure out. I guess they have become like almost $100 million annualized revenue. Of course, much smaller compared to the other. Like OpenAI is now reported to have become $10 billion annualized revenue. So it's far smaller. But I think they're trying to find more geopolitical alignment
Yep.
and trying to gain ground more in the EMEA region. And that's why you will see they're focusing a lot more on the EMEA and working at Europe's pace, I guess. So I think that's okay. They're still.
Yeah. Yeah, and,
Um,
and as you mentioned, there's politics. It seems like it's creeping into a lot of these different things. And
mm,
I know the U.S. stance and their policy that we have here in the U.S. on going to be the top source for AI. I know that may not have sat very well with some leaders in Europe. So to me, Mistral is 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 positioning itself to say, hey, don't go to China, don't go to the US. You've got a European based company, and we're driving more innovation. And that's obviously what we're talking about here with Magistral as their reasoning model. One other thing I'll point out is, to me, there's no pun intended. Obviously, it's not Switzerland, but the the Mistral models show up basically everywhere in the Google Cloud Marketplace. It's on Azure, in the Foundry. It's in Amazon SageMaker. It's in their own model with LeChat, or their own distribution and interface through LeChat. It's also even on IBM Watson X. So it's sort of like the Switzerland. They play everywhere.
yeah, that's true. I think they're trying to find that alignment with everyone. Um, okay, let's talk about Apple. Okay, because everybody's talking about Apple. Because and the reason everybody's talking about Apple, because Apple is not talking about AI. That is the problem. Um, and there are a bunch of announcements that came out, but overall, I would say it's underwhelming, and there is nothing kind of breakthrough. There were a couple of items that people talked about a lot, but overall, it's been a very concerning. Um, from the investors, from the users, from the buyers, everybody, that Apple is still not waking up to that I would say reality. The CD, really, there was no much announcement on the CD part. People were expecting a huge reset on the CD, but that didn't happen. Anyway, let's talk about some of those announcements that happened at the this WWDC, Worldwide Developer Convention. So, first of all, visual intelligence, which is basically that, like the intelligence AI which operates on the vision on the iOS. These visual intelligence will be now able to interact with the information on your iPhone's screen. So, for instance, if you come across a post on social media app, visual intelligence can conduct an image search related to what you see while browsing. I think it's pretty handy, right? I mean, you don't have to then upload a search image and then do the search. I think that would be convenient. Great example of where Apple's strength really lies, right? Integrating with the device. The tool can perform the search using the Google search, ChatGPT, and other similar apps. Another announcement was Apple integrating ChatGPT into the Image Playground, its own AI powered image generation tool. So now, you can use that as well. I think this one was a bit of more enthusiastic reception. Workout Buddy. So, Workout Buddy is like a text to speech model to deliver encouragement while you exercise. I really need this one, to be honest. Um,
It's
and
basically keep on going. Yeah, yeah. I can see that now, right, in the back of my head.
exactly, mimicking a personal trainer's voice. And so, for example, when you begin a run, the AI within the workout app will provide you with a motivational talk, highlighting key moments such as when you ran your fastest mile and your average heart rate. Um, I think this could actually trigger, to be honest. I can imagine, right? I mean, it could help a lot of people.
Yeah.
As the Pink Floyd used to say, right, to avoid that moments of the basically the moments of well, I forgot the term actually, momentary lapse of reasons. Um, anyway, there is another one which is basically Apple Intelligence is now powering a new live translation feature for messages, FaceTime, and the phone call. So, again, nothing breakthrough. We all have seen that. This has happened a lot more, but finally, Apple is catching up. And this technology will automatically translate the text or spoken words into the user's preferred language in real time. And during the FaceTime calls, users can see the live captions. And for the phone calls, users can translate the conversation aloud. There were actually two other features, and particularly the one of them actually was a head turner. And this one is about the call screening. So when you get a call from the unknown callers, um, what will happen is it will automatically answer calls from unknown numbers in the background, and it can basically and it will allow users to hear the caller's name and the reason for the call before deciding whether to answer. The other thing is that it can basically even talk to them, try to identify the intent and the purpose of the call, and then give that information to the user before deciding to. I think that's pretty handy, right? We all are like sick and tired of like having all these spamming calls. But to be honest, sometimes we also wonder that are we missing something really important because of those unknown numbers, right? um, I think
Yeah,
this one will be very helpful.
yeah, definitely. I mean, I've been using an app for probably the last 3 years that does that. So if this is included inside of like the iOS, that'll save me $100 a year, because that's one of the features that does in terms of you know, caller identification, reading it, and then there's also other things that it does to block spam callers. But if they're adding that level of sophistication into the iPhone, that helps me because it'll reduce a bill.
Hey, which one is that app, Jamie?
It's actually called Robo Killer. It's actually a really good app.
Oh, RoboClear. Yeah, I heard about it.
Yep.
Okay. Well, another feature is hold assist. It automatically detects hold music when waiting for a call center agent, and users can choose to stay connected while on hold, allowing them to use their iPhone for other tasks. Notifications will alert them when a live agent becomes available. Honestly, I think this is really,
That
really good.
that's that's a good feature.
Yes, I mean, sometimes literally we have been on the call. I've seen like 1 hour, right? It takes, but just we are desperate to still hang on, and then we just keep listening. Really boring music. This one
Yeah.
is really, really good. Um, the other thing they also announced that, let's say for example, people in a group are discussing about the choices, etc. Then there will be some poll suggestions, and then basically this new feature will allow users to create polls within the Messages app. And this feature uses Apple Intelligence to suggest polls based on the context of your conversation. So it will be pretty smart, right? It's not just a feature to create a poll, but it will suggest you the context. And then if people in group chat are having, basically when people want to make a decision where to eat, things like that, that's what it will be handy. And finally, There is a shortcuts app which is becoming more useful with Apple Intelligence. The company explained that when building a shortcut, users will be able to select an AI model to enable features like AI summarization. I think this is a, I would say, roundup of major news related to AI at the Apple WWDC.
Yeah, like you said, some interesting announcements. And by the way, there were other announcements other than these for AI, but they're not in the AI space. Like you said, though, when you kind of came on with this topic, what was missing there was you know a lot of developments around Apple Intelligence. It was kind of devoid of that. And to me, if you I've been beta testing some of these things. They're not earth shattering, and the things that they put out, some cases didn't work all that well. So they're probably still on the drawing board for really doing the Apple Intelligence well. Anyway, on to another topic, and this one's around OpenAI. I kind of alluded to it when I was mentioning some things around Mistral, but OpenAI came out with their O3 Pro model. So this is a recent one, June update for that. It's based upon the architecture, obviously, of O3, which up to this point was their flagship reasoning model. This O3 Pro basically does everything better. Deeper reasoning, greater availability or reliability in that model, especially on what it can do in terms of math and science, as well as coding. So that's really where it's going to shine. It's got tool capabilities, so it can search the web, analyze files, run Python code, all those things that you're used to. Um, Obviously, it beats out what O1 Pro and O3 can do. Now, the things that what were interesting to me, and let me just add this slide up here, is this part, and it's about the evaluations that they did. There's several different tests, but they have one that's called the 4.4 reliability benchmark, and this is where they send in a prompt, but it's got to answer it correctly 4 times um, in all 4 attempts for it to pass. And you can see, when they compared that. Sorry, keep on clicking on the thing. When they compared that against several different benchmarks, whether it's the AME 24, the PhD, or the uh, coding competition one, it beat out each of the variations prior to it, whether it was O1 Pro or the O3 Medium, and the O3 is what's basically is everyone's used to right now. So by far this is certainly a much better model. The one that jumps out to me a lot is actually on the coding one, especially as compared to like the O1 model. It's what, maybe quick math, what's 80% maybe improvement between that. Smaller percentages, obviously, when you look at some of the other ones, the 10% jump on the AME 24 model, and even less than that on the PhD one. But great capability along with this model. The Pro version, it is Pro, so it's only available right now in for the Pro users. So it's only Pro and Team users. The Enterprise will get this soon. I think they said within a week or two. This O3 Pro model is priced at $20 per million tokens input and $80 per million tokens output. So why is that important? Well, another big thing that OpenAI announced at the same time they announced this O3 Pro is a huge price drop on O3. Now, you go back to what I just said about, like, pretty close in performance outside of maybe the coding one, but O3 is has been you know their rock solid model as like their top tier model. Now it just came drastically down in price. So this model is now priced at $2 input per million and $8 per million output tokens. That is square in line with some of the top competition that it had seen before in terms of price. So this now, in my opinion, opens up the potential for wide use on this very capable reasoning model to a lot of organizations, companies, or people that might not have been wanting to use this given the high price. So even if you just compare like this '03 model to what when '01 came out, the price difference is huge. And even when just comparing it to back in April with the version of '03. So test it out if you haven't been using '03 before. Certainly the price point is a lot better than it was previously.
And yeah, of course, I think the philosophy seems like let's make it as confusing as possible and then we will simplify. Because, of course, the main model and the mini and the nano was not enough and they will continue with pro version as well. I've totally lost it, Jamie. I have stopped keeping track of, you know, which model they still have it, what they don't, and then it just has started becoming too confusing. I'm really hoping that GPT-5 will bring everything together in one single model. Until then, we have to just keep it track. We need another model to keep track of all that offerings now.
Yep. Yeah, I hear you. I'm waiting, like waiting for that GPT-5 to come out. So speaking of waiting for things, segueing into this next piece. So Microsoft just made available, at least in the US only, Copilot Vision on Windows. I did actually try this. This is a little snip from my own computer. So what this brings, so there is a Copilot inside of your machine, whether or not you're on Windows 10 or 11, but this actually allows your computer to view an individual like a browser window or an application. It looks at it and then uses that to analyze against and be like, hey, I see this on your screen, do you need some help here? Literally, you could use it for doing analysis, or you could use it like, I'm stuck, I don't know where to go, help me out. um, the other thing is you could allow two different you could use this Copilot Vision to look at two different applications simultaneously, so that allows the Copilot to actually connect the dots between those two applications, meaning that if you've got some data over here and you need to figure out how I'm going to align that in a PowerPoint, it could actually help you discern what you need to do. So it's basically like having someone over your shoulder that's looking at your screen, whether or not you think that's freaky or not, but that's what allows you to do. Very similar to what we were just talking about as it relates to the Apple Worldwide Developer Conference and using that vision piece, if you think of it that way. So it's obviously very versatile. It could do different things from looking at a travel itinerary and then trying to help you build that out just based upon like, hey, here's this picture, I'm looking to go here, and you might not know where that thing is. But this Copilot with Vision be like, oh, I know where that is. Let me build the travel itinerary for you, and here you go. So obviously, you have to opt in to be able to use this, or you could, again, obviously, enabling or disabling it as well. So as I mentioned already, this is only in US only right now. There are plans to expand this into non-European countries. Obviously, there's a little bit more rules and regulation in European in Europe. So anyway, pretty cool feature. Like I said, I did use it a little bit over the last day or two, and it's kind of cool.
Awesome. Okay, let's talk
Personal
about
rummaging.
something which we generally use now. For example, AI use cases. It's a new segment that we actually started showing last week, and I'll continue this week. Let's talk to, like in terms of how the AI is being used. And here is an example. So let's talk about um, AI use case of the week, which is basically generating audio description. So audio description is basically a tool for, you can say, improving the accessibility of the media content. What happens is that essentially people who have low vision, they can't really fully process what's happening on the screen, and then you want to actually generate an audio description of what's happening on the screen, right, as a narrative. Now, the challenge with audio description, however, is that unlike captions, it does interfere with the live action or the live spoken audio on the screen. So you need to find the segment and insert the audio description between when people are actually conversing. Because low vision can, of course, people with low vision can still hear, so they do want to hear the dialogue between or whatever the audio event going on. So it's a bit tricky because you have to find those pauses and then insert the description of what's happening within those pauses. It can become tricky. But again, AI to the rescue. One of the company that has done it successfully, and they provided a service, and I'm going to show you a quick demo. This demo was actually made at Microsoft Ignite last year, and it shows that how one of the advertising company, WPP marketing company, they actually work with the company that actually sell the mayo and for the Super Bowl ad, and then they generated an audio description for that segment, and they use a GPT vision model that time. Okay, so they use a GPT vision model to understand the scene, what's happening, describe it, and then they use that text which is generated and then insert that appropriately so it does not overlap over what when people are talking about it. Okay, um, and many of the cases it is actually a regulatory requirement as well, so it's not just an optional thing. Like for example, there is an ADA Act, which is Americans with Disabilities Act, which was enacted in 1990, and then it in fact it has been modified to actually include the audio description laws for online only businesses like Netflix, for example. There's a Rehabilitation Act also, which basically was amended in 2018, that any visual content produced by the federal agencies must include audio description, right? So let's have a quick look at this video where it will show what that audio description generally looks like.
View from fridge. Person rummaging.
Leftover chicken, scallions, cheese. What am I gonna make with this?
Fluffy cat observes.
Mayo.
Fridge open.
Hellman's.
Jar in fridge.
Holy, you can talk.
So you can see, right, in this very brief segment, you have to insert the audio description. It's a bit tricky because like very small, very brief pauses between what woman is talking about, and then the narration has to go in between that. In fact, it is something that's I'm working with the customer right now because this is a requirement. But it's a good example of how AI can come to the rescue and help creating this audio description, because otherwise what happens is oftentimes this is actually done manually, and you can imagine that process is slow, it takes long time, and it may not be probably as fast, as productive, and as even accurate as possible. Okay, all right, now let's talk about another thing. Actually, this week we will also talk about another, like a word of the week, which is cues. And cues is essentially, it's like a jump start for the output of the model. Basically, you are giving a cue to the model and guiding it to generate the output in certain direction. Take a look at the example here. For example, the first one, this is the same prompt which will go for all the scenarios. In this, there is certain blurb of the text is being passed, and then the command is to summarize the above email message from that email, right? There's no cue given. There's a simple command which says summarize the above email message, and then model will generate an output. Now, every time you say this, model may come up with any kind of format. You don't know what will happen, right? Depending on, because every time you say, it's not going to be 100% exactly same as the previous time. Even the model format may change, the word length may change, right? The overall length of the paragraph may change, the tone may change, the like for example the form factor, like even like whether it's bulleted or a paragraph, that may also change every time because you don't control that. You're not guiding the model on that specifically. But what if you provide a cue, which means that you're actually kind of giving the first few words. Now the model will take that as part of the input. It knows it has to start from here, and now it's going to predict, let's say, 5 words out or 10 words out, right? So now it knows what kind of pattern it has to follow. Now you're given it a hint, which is what is basically Q. In the second example on the screen, you can see that now with the same prompt, however, now you say summarize the above email message, and then you say the key takeaway of the message is. This becomes your starting point, right? These 6 words, 7 words are now the starting point, and the model is going to start working from the eighth words onwards, right? And now you can see how it changes the output of the model. It's shorter, and it is basically continuity of what you have already provided as a queue. In the third example, we are doing the same thing, but this time we are actually saying key points, and then we're providing a bullet, just a bullet, no text, just a bullet. Now the model knows that it is expected to generate the output in bulleted format. And then you can see that now it is generating only the bullets, nothing else, not a paragraph. Okay. So a good example is a prompt engineering technique, and it could be helpful if somebody is looking to generate output and direct that in a specific format.
Yeah,
Um,
these are powerful because we all are driven by how we want things structured, and these models learn that because it's trained on the things that we've already constructed or built. So if we give it this cue, it knows because it's seen something like that previously, and it's like, all right, my human, my person who's asking this wants it this way. So it's very powerful, and it's very simple as well. So as long as you know these little tips or tricks, it's a great way of actually interacting with the model and getting what you want out of it.
oh, Jimmy, I like how you say my human. Okay,
Yeah.
not turning the tables. Okay, my AI, my pet to my human now.
Yeah.
like, okay, all right. Let's talk about this prompt of the week. Right, we have started this segment as well since last week, and we'll talk about like just some very productive ways in which people can use it. And this is an example of a prompt of the week. For example, when let's say when you're visiting an office, you may be remote worker, you may work in a certain office, you're working with other colleagues from who are in other offices, and now you're visiting that location. What you want to do is, and then you can make it as a personal as well, right? Maybe you just live somewhere and now you're visiting another location where you do have some friends, um, but you don't know exactly, right, who is where, etc. And then you just want to make sure that you don't miss out that list of people when contacting them. So you can ask the Copilot, for example, in this case, you can ask the M365 Copilot and say something like this. And what you can also see on the screen here, like I'm heading to, let's say, XYZ in New York City, right? Whatever office name you want to give. Check my email, calendar, and Teams messages from the last 6 weeks. Tell who I have collaborated with that are based in New York City. And then ask it to list their contact information so I can reach out to them to let them know I'm coming. Now, I tried this, Jamie, this Copilot. It worked well, but the first time when I gave this, it gave me a list of people. None of them was actually in that city, honestly. In fact, I tried for our right, and I said that okay, people who are based out of Redmond, and in fact, it gave you as a list of the contact, but of course, you are not in Redmond. So I said, again, sometimes you have to like just make sure that the it gives enough hint and more explicit instruction. I just say none of them are based on Redmond. Please make sure that the contacts are based in Redmond, in my case. And then it generated another list, which was actually perfectly fine. And each of them were actually based out of Redmond. So, sometimes you need to give a nudge. Sometimes you just need to clarify because sometimes the model may interpret just like humans do in a certain way, although you may be thinking in another direction. Okay. I guess that is all, Jamie, for this week. I think we covered pretty much a lot of things, all the news, announcements, launches, and some of the techniques and the prompt of the week as well.
Yeah, it sounds good. Yeah, we covered a lot, and I do like these prompts of the week. It stirs on things that I could actually use as well. So it's good stuff.
Hey, exactly. I think these are pretty handy. I hope everybody likes it. Please keep liking and commenting and giving us feedback and share and subscribe.
Sounds good.
Okay.
Take care, everybody.
Afternoon, everybody. Bye, Jamie.